We're going to learn how to draw some spider webs today. So grab some paper or a whiteboard so you can practice. So the first thing we're going to do is draw a vertical line down the center of our board and a horizontal line across the center of our board. So it looks like a big plus sign. And now we're going to draw two diagonal lines that intersect the middle. So we're going to start here and go around here. So it's like you're making a plus sign and then a multiplication sign. Alright, so that's going to be the start of our spider web. Now what we're going to do is we are going to draw lines that connect each one of those sections. And we're going to use curved lines that curve in towards the middle of our spider web. So we're going to just start at the top and we're going to curve down and then back up to the next line. So this is going to happen on each line. We curve down and then back up, down, and then up. Now we're upside down, so we're kind of going up and then down. But as long as your curve is facing the center, that's what you need to remember. And each of your curved lines should connect to one of your straight lines. And then you keep repeating that. So now you're going to just drop down a little bit and do that again. And to make this look really nice, you want to start your next one off in the same spot. So if you start down here, they won't line up. So make them line up. And then you just keep going until you get to the center. So go ahead and practice that. And if it doesn't look right, stop and ask yourself, how is it different than what Miss Snicker is doing? And try to fix that. So now that you've got your practice in, you can kind of think about what your final draft is going to look like. So I have a few different options for you. You guys should all have a piece of black paper if you came to school and picked up the supplies a couple of weeks ago. So if you have a piece of black paper and crayons, you can get a white crayon and draw your spider web in white crayon on your black paper and make your spider web that way. And it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. You can kind of set it up how you want, but that would be one way you could do your final. For this one, I used Sharpie and paint, watercolor paint. So if you have watercolor paint, this could be an option for you. If you don't, it might not be. But you could draw your spider webs on your paper and in Sharpie. And you have to use a permanent marker. You can't use a washable marker. And then you can kind of pick a color scheme and do a painting like that. And then these are kind of similar. So this one also requires a white crayon and paint, watercolor paint. So if you don't have paint, you do have markers, then what you could do instead of doing paint is this one is pretty much identical, but I used markers. And then I used a brush and water to kind of spread the marker out. So now that you have your practice done and you've seen a few different examples, think about what you have and what you like, and then start working on your final spiderweb drawing. I'm going to demonstrate the black construction paper and white crayon first. If you don't want to watch this one, you can skip ahead. I'm actually using a white colored pencil, so you can kind of use whatever you have. I'm drawing a little circle on my paper first just to kind of see where I'm going to put it. I'm not going to put it right in the middle. I'm going to put it a little bit off to the side just to make it look a little bit more dynamic. But I'm going to use the same ideas that I did in practice. Except for with that circle, I'm going to kind of break it up and have the center blank instead of having all the lines intersect there. So you can see that I am taking the lines and not bringing them all the way to the middle. In our practice, we just did diagonals going one or two different ways, but you could add more in there if you want. Now that you've kind of got it figured out, you could add extras and make them different lengths, and this will just kind of make your spider web look a little bit more not so perfect. So you can kind of think about that as you put your lines in and get started. But everything else is going to be pretty much the same, right? You're going to start on one of your points and you're going to curve over to the next line, and make sure your curve is pointing towards the center of your spider web. And as you go around, just keep connecting and then keep filling in all the way until you get to the end in the middle. Now that I have the main spider web done, I'm going to take these lines and extend them off the edge of the page just to kind of fill up that black space and make it look like it's kind of coming at me and it's really hanging onto something. So you can do that too, especially if you didn't put it right in the middle. That will kind of just make it a little bit more dynamic. And I'm going to add a few more of those curved lines just to kind of add a little bit of interest and kind of have it fade out as it goes closer to the edges. This is a spider web after all, so if you want to throw a little spider in there, please feel free. This is going to be really basic, but I'm basically just using 2 ovals, a big one and a small one, and then 8 little lines that kind of bend into the letter L or letter number 7. So if you want to get a little bit more detailed than that, you can look one up on your iPad. For this painting, I have 3 different spider webs, so I'm just grabbing my pencil and making little circles where the center of my spider web is going to be, and then I'm going to work on my first one, starting the same way that I did before, doing my vertical lines and my horizontal lines and my diagonal lines. The only difference here now from my practice is that because I have that circle there, I'm going to leave the middle empty so that the lines do not intersect, but everything else will be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and get those filled in. As I work on these last 2, I'm not going to make them look as perfect as this one. I am going to kind of add a few more extra diagonal lines and then just kind of not line up all my curved lines perfectly, just to kind of make them a little bit more imperfect. So that's a decision that you can make as well if you don't want them to look perfectly symmetrical. You can kind of mix it up a little bit. The last thing I'm going to do is for my drawing is I'm going to take all of my straight lines and I'm going to extend them off the page or have them run into the next spider web just to kind of show that it's attached to something and just kind of add a little bit more interest and design and pattern to the background. Alright, so now I'm ready to add some paint, so I'm using my watercolor paints. And if you don't have paints but you want to do this, then you can do the watercolor, or you can do washable markers. You can skip towards the end to see how you can use washable markers if you want to see that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of plan a color scheme before I get started. I'm going to use warm colors inside the webs, and then outside the web I'm going to use cool colors. And I'm not going to fill in every single space. I'm going to leave some white to kind of give the eye a little bit of a break and a little bit of a rest. As you begin painting, please just remember and keep in mind that these are watercolors, so you need plenty of water on your brush. If your paint feels sticky, then your brush isn't wet enough. So make sure your paint does not feel sticky. Make sure there's plenty of water on it and be gentle with your brush. Don't smash it into the paint or onto your paper. And especially if you don't have thick paper, be really careful that you don't press too hard so that you don't go all the way through. And also clean out your brush whenever you change colors. So I'm going to go ahead and finish painting warm colors in my web, cool colors in my background, but you can kind of pick your own color scheme however you want to do it. Alright, for this next one I need a white crayon, and I'm just using my sketchbook paper, but you can use whatever paper you have, but this will be getting wet, so just be careful that you don't add too much water or press too hard once you get to the painting spot. So I'm going to take my white crayon and I'm going to go ahead and draw my spiderweb just like in practice. Now during this video you are not going to be able to see my crayon, but it's going to be there and you will see it later. So please make sure that when you do this, you press hard with your crayon, and if you get at the right angle you will be able to see it. So just kind of set up just like we did before, vertical line, a horizontal line, and then two intersecting diagonal lines, and then use your curved lines to connect all of those together. So let me go ahead and finish that. Alright, my drawing is all done. I've got my paints ready, and I'm going to use purples, blues, and blacks, and I just really need to make sure at this point you are using plenty of water. If again your paint is too thick or sticky, this really won't work. So you need to have pressed really hard with your crayon, not so hard that you're busting your crayon, and you also need to make sure that as you add your watercolors you have plenty of water in them and that they are not too thick. If they're too thick you won't be able to see the crayon. So you can kind of blend your colors right over top of each other. I'm doing purple and blue and black. They kind of work well together. Blue and purple are related to each other on the color wheel. So if you're going to mix colors, make sure you know what they're going to look like when they get mixed together. For this last one, it is essentially just like the previous one, where we're going to start with a white crayon and we're going to draw our spider web. The only difference this time is that we're going to be using markers instead of paint. So let me finish up my spider web and then we'll jump in with the marker. Since I did cool colors in my last spiderweb, I'm going to use warm colors in this one. So I'm using red, orange, yellow, and pink, and my goal right now is just to kind of fill in the different spaces of the spiderweb with each of those colors. So let me go ahead and get those drawn on there, and then we'll get some water and we'll mix it together and see what it looks like. Alright, so now that I have my washable marker down, I'm getting just my water cup and a brush, and I'm just going to take the water and go over the colors. Now because these are washable, the colors will move and blend, and then that crayon will kind of pop up. So again, if you don't have paint, this is kind of a nice option. You do need to be careful about your paper that you don't tear through it, so be really gentle with it, and kind of just go over your color and make them blend, and then that crayon will pop right out.